here?
Microservices basically like to like break the project into smaller components.
You could use REST services, right? Why a microservice?
Okay, so like REST services basically we use when like a client is basically someone who has to consume, not for the representation purposes, he has to consume data. So like REST services are just like if there is a thing which is consuming data for some computation purposes basically. But like microservices, we can even even the normal code can consume data and like use this data for representing it on UI or parsing it. So like
microservices you will expose it, right? It will be kind of service only.
Yeah.
You will expose kind of REST services only.
Yeah. Yeah, but like according what I understand, like why we are using is basically like the difference basically in the way in which we want to consume the data. So like basic purpose of REST is to consume data, not to interpret it much, but in microservices we can even parse the data and throw it to the UI layer.
Which microservices you are using?
Sorry?
Which microservices you are using?
So basically we have there are certain we have broke our project into certain microservices like for election there is a microservice, for allocation there is a microservice, for functionality wise.
Which service you are working on?
I am like working on scrubbing and election basically.
Okay, so this scrubbing and election.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you make it a REST service, will there be any problem?
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So like I don't have actually much clarity on this, but from what I understand is like again as what I said initially that the data which like here the APIs are there which actually can return specific things, but in REST we have to return the specific entities that we have created in REST in JSON or XML form.
Okay. Okay. Where are you using multi-threading in your project?
Multi-threading is basically like so if we have like multiple incoming requests, so basically to handle each like not to for each request there is a separate thread, but yeah we have a thread pool which is basically like continuously polls in for the queue for available corporate actions that are there in the queue and process them.
No, 1 second. You are using queue or multi-threading?
We are using thread pool to process the corporate actions that are there in the incoming in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So basically each corporate action like is submitted to the task of the thread pool.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically picked up by a thread pool thread to process eventually.
No, see, thread pool will contain some threads. That's
yeah.
it.
Yes. And basically threads are there, but we have to submit the task. There is a basically a queue. Like basically we are submitting the task.
Queue you will submit. So which queue you are using?
So like we are not explicitly using. We just submit our task to the thread pool, but internally the thread pool is using like what I've read is internally it uses a blocking queue.
Okay, it's using blocking queue.
Sorry?
It's using blocking queue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know what is blocking queue?
Yes, I know.
What is it?
Blocking queue is basically a thread safe version of queue. So multiple threads can safely operate on it without causing concurrency issue, as well as if we have a say put operation. and if it is a say array blocking queue, so array blocking queue is fixed in size. We have an upper bound, and if it is full, and if a like thread is trying to put something into it and it finds it is like full, it will block. And same is with if the size is 0 and some thread is trying to consume some data, it finds that the queue is empty, it will block again.
So at a time you are executing only one thread?
No, multiple threads can operate. It's not the case that one thread, but it's basically like there won't be any concurrency issue. Plus, we would be like we don't have to internally. It uses these conditions which I'm telling to just to make sure that like we don't try to consume data which is not present, or we don't try to put data when the queue is already full. So like if we would implement it, we would have to handle these cases. Internally, this is in turn handled by these queues, these blocking queues.
How are you handling at the receiver end?
So you are asking how is it internally implemented in this?
Yes.
Basically, this queue has a certain size if it is an array blocking queue. So before putting the task, we would check. Basically, there would be a condition if size is equal to the max size that we would have defined while like initializing the queue. If it is the case, then we would call wait. Okay. And similar is the case when we are trying to get something out of the queue. We would check if the size is 0, then we have to wait. And once the like when we are producing, if it is not full, it will produce and it will call notify all. So
you are using this blocking queue just to limit the threads?
Okay, so as I told, we are not explicitly using it. We are using thread pools that in turn uses this blocking queue.
Okay, so you are using thread pool.
Yeah.
And how are you getting the thread from the thread pool?
We don't get, actually we submit the task to the thread pool and like.
What happens after that?
Okay, so what happens is, basically if say we have a fixed thread pool, like of 10 threads. So in like thread pool will say we are submitting the first task and it finds that the first thread is free. So the first task would be assigned to the first thread. Now we are submitting second task, the second thread. Similarly, like we put up 10 tasks and 10 threads are simultaneously working on these tasks, 10 tasks. Now the 11th task comes in and the thread pools find that all the threads are busy executing the task that I have already submitted. So no thread is free. So it will be put up in the queue, and like once a thread finishes the task, say the 5th thread finishes the task, it would return back to the thread pool and check in the queue that any other task is there. If it is there, it will pick this basically task and it will start executing it.
And what is Executor service?
So Executor service is a service which is like helping us to achieve this. So it is an implementation of Executor framework interface.
In your scenario, could you use Executor service?
Sorry, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, in your scenario, could you use Executor service?
In which scenario? Sorry?
In your scenario, in your project.
Okay, yeah, so as I told, like for corporate actions, we are using this Executor service. So like what happens is we are capturing these corporate actions from outside, and once like we get it, we submit it to this Executor service, the thread pool that we have created through this Executor service. So that is basically a handle to the thread pool, and we are submitting our like task which is in the form of corporate actions to this thread pool.
Okay, tell me, let's say there are 3 threads, T1, T2 and T3.
Okay.
How can you make them run one by one? So once first is finished, then second should start, and then second is finished, then third should start. Okay,
so basically we have to use join method which is there in like thread APIs. So basically T1 thread has to have a handle of so T1 has to finish first. So T2 need to have basically a handle or a reference to T1 thread, and it will like call T1.join before finishing. So this ensures that T2 will
Before
wait
finishing,
until T1 finishes.
how
And
will you come to know it's about to finish?
sorry.
How will you come to know T1 is about to finish?
So the join method, like the thread will go into waiting state, waiting for the thread 1 to finish. And once it finishes, it
Tell me
will.
the code. Let's say there are T1, T2, and T3 threads are there.
Okay.
Tell me when you will start and when you will put join over there.
Okay. So, like what exact scenario is that first T1 should finish, then T2 should finish, and then T3 should finish, right?
Yes, yes.
And is it the case that T2 should not even start before T1 finishes? Like, is the output of
Yes.
T1 relevant to T2?
Yes.
Okay, so before, like in the run method of T2, the first statement would be T1.join. So basically, once like the main thread starts the T2 thread, the run method would execute, and the first statement it would encounter is T1.join. So this will signal to thread T2 that I should wait before T1 finishes its task. So it will go.
So in run method, this run method, right?
Yeah.
How will you get the reference of T1?
Okay, so basically this thread must be some runnable task, right? So it can have a variable of thread type, and from the main thread, while initializing this thread to this runnable task, we can like pass the reference of thread 1 to the constructor. Are you getting me? Like what I said?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we can like basically pass that reference of thread T1 to this thread second runnable task via constructor, and then use this handle in the run method.
Okay. So this run method will be okay. So in this run method, you will do T1.join.
Yes.
Okay. Then
Once once the thread T1 finishes, it will automatically come out of the waiting state, waiting for T1 to complete. And then once the JVM schedules this T2 thread, it will also complete its run method. Like once the JVM schedules it, it's in running state, it will execute its run method and will eventually.
So then T2 and T3 both will start, right?
Yeah, but in T3 again we can put T2.join. So
T3, T1, T2 both use the same run code.
But they would have a different handle, right? So while creating T3, while creating T2, we pass the reference of T1. So while creating T3, we can pass the reference of T2, right? Because it's basically calling the current, like the instance variable that I've maintained.
What do you mean by handle here?
So if we would have an instance variable of thread type, say or runnable type, right? And
this T1 and let's say there is one thread, my thread, and which implements runnable.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now tell me, and inside that we are creating one method which is run.
Okay. So I am telling you, yeah. So say our class is runnable or run. Say runnable.
And inside that we are creating one run method.
Yeah.
Now tell me what I should do inside this run method.
Yeah. So I am telling you, we would have an instance variable in this our runnable class, right? And that
instance variable of my thread, the class that we created.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And
created. Okay. Yeah.
And there would be a constructor, right?
We'll create one constructor inside this. Okay.
And that would have like this instance variable value passed from outside. Basically, while creating this runnable task object, we would pass this instance.
What is the constructor in this? Argument in this constructor?
Of the same type class.
My thread.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this instance variable would be initialized with this argument value that we are passing to this constructor.
Okay.
And in the run method, we would use handle like this instance variable dot join.
Okay.
Yeah. So while creating thread T2, we would have passed reference of T1, and while creating T3 task, we would have passed reference of T2. And since in the run method we are calling the instance variable dot join, so it is like we are not actually specifying. So it is a generic type of code which can work for both threads.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, okay, let's move to next question. Can you tell me what is the difference in class not found exception and no class def found error?
Class not found exception. Yeah. Class. Okay. So like when we do class dot for name and we put in say a third party library, say com.mysql.jdbc, and the class is not actually there, so we get the class not found exception at runtime.
So if class is not there means if it is not present at the runtime, then it will give class not found exception, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And when we'll get no class def found error?
So no class def found error is like actually like I have tried it in my local machine. So if there is a class A and it has a class B also, and A has a dependency on B. So during compile time, like I had this B compiled and there was a B.class file present. So it compiled fine. But once I deleted it from my machine, B.class file, and run the A.class file using a Java command, then it gave no class def. So basically at compile time it was present, but at runtime we were not able to find the definition.
Okay. Are you confused with both the things? Which one is compile time and which one is runtime? Are you sure the class not found exception is runtime?
Yeah. Because so I've written a code and it was during runtime that I got class not found exception.
Class not found is runtime. Okay.
Basically, and in class not found exception, the difference is like we are actually directly during runtime we are trying to load a class dynamically, and we are basically at runtime directly, like we are using class dot for name, so it is not checking during compile time that whether the class was present or not. When we execute the code, it like dynamically tries to get that class, say of JDBC driver, and it does not found, it gives the class not found exception at runtime. And like no class def found error is basically the class was present at compile time. The compiler made sure that the class was there, it had reference to this dot class file, but actually during runtime it was not able to find that particular class.
So if class is loaded by the class loader at the compile time, why do you think it will not present at the runtime?
As I told, like what I did on my local machine was there were two classes, A and B, and like A had a reference to B. So like during compile time, both the dot class files were created and the class loader was successfully able to find the B dot class file. Right.
So why it will not find at the runtime?
Because
class loader loaded it. What can be the reason it did not find at the runtime?
Okay. This I have not explored. I actually deleted it on my machine, like manually. So yeah, this is, I am not sure like how, like what can be other possible reasons that that is not able, it is not able.
You understand how the class loader works, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Class loader, if it finds the class, Java file, it will create a class file, it will load the class, right?
Yeah.
And if it loaded the class, nobody removes it, right? The class will be there always.
Yeah.
And if its class is there, then why at runtime it's not able to find?
I'm not sure on this actually. Yeah, I've never explored this.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's say there is one parking lot.
Okay.
And this parking lot has 6 floors.
Okay.
Okay. And you can take pen paper.
I have a pen and paper with me.
Okay. So you have to create the design in object-oriented manner.
Okay.
Okay. So that we follow the OOPS principles, right? So you just need to tell me first what and all object you will create for this parking lot and what will be the operations inside that.
Okay. Can I take 2 to 3 minutes to think over this?
Yeah, sure. Take
okay.
time.
So, sorry, are there any more conditions like which I need to consider, or I need to design a simple, basic parking lot?
Basic parking lot only, just it should be object oriented.
Okay, sure.
So 6 floors are there, and each floor has 2-wheeler and 4-wheeler parking, and that will decide later how much is the 2-wheeler parking and how much is the 4-wheeler parking.
Okay.